Awesome. We are going here. Hi guys. I'm so excited for today because not only do I get to have a conversation and talk 2025, 2026 with someone who's hyper intelligent, but also a friend of mine. And so you guys welcome Tommy Thornburgh, president of Prime Corporate Services. He's so much more than that, but Tommy, welcome.
Thank you, dude. Thank you for having me. I'm excited about this as well. And Landon and I had the pleasure of hanging out in Arizona last week with our families, and I got whooped up in golf playing Landon. So I wish we were playing golf as opposed to doing this, but this is a good alternative.
Well, dude, we had such a good time, dude. We played golf. We got to get the families together. We did hibachi night, like all the things, and got to live our lives and get to know one another more and more and more, which is beautiful, and have amazing conversations. You guys are up to some really cool stuff at Prime, and we can get into that too and whatnot. You know, I have a ton of ignorant, genuinely questions about, you know, what's upcoming. And some of this you may not even know the answer to and whatnot, because this is kind of a really interesting time as we dive into here. What is it? Monday is the inauguration of a whole new administration coming into office. And with that comes obviously policy changes, tax changes, so on and so forth. We got the BOI happening or not happening, and then it's happening, and then it's not happening. And we have all these different things. And I'm the Debbie planner. And so I went through the FinCEN BOI applications for all of my entities back in September and got them all done, of course, ahead of time and whatnot. But maybe we can just dive into a couple of those things. I guess for you, Tommy, you know, when you are approaching mentally a new administration coming in, I guess, how do you mentally approach that process and what that looks like and when they're coming in? And obviously that is different when it's a Republican Party coming in versus a Democratic Party. It makes you look at things differently. But I guess maybe allow me to tap into your brain as you're heading into 2025 with the new administration coming in. How do you approach that?
Yeah, this is the third time I've gone through this, and every time is a little bit different. I think one of the areas, and Pace Morby actually is the one that said this, is he's like, I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat, speak entrepreneur. And I think that summed it up very, very well, because one of the things that I have learned is, and I go back to when Trump was running against Hillary and they were having their debate and they're both pointing fingers. What about your friends? What about your friends? And they're both talking about the same thing. They're both making each other look bad. They're both saying, the reality is running a campaign is extremely expensive. And a lot of that money is going to come from donors that are business owners. So for anyone watching this channel, knowing your following, it's business owners, right? So all we can really do is take it one day at a time and see what these changes are. I'll drop this link and maybe you can even put it in the show notes for everybody. But every year the IRS comes out with tax code changes every year. And this year, they doubled down on what they're calling tax inflation adjustments for the tax year 2025. So this is the start of what these changes are going to be. The good news is a lot of these are increasing the amount. So the amount that you can pay your kids for working for your business has increased because the standard deduction, the marginal rates, the earned income tax credit, the qualified transportations, the health flexible accounts. Like a lot of these numbers are increasing due to inflation. And then another two comments that I think are very noteworthy for this group. The first one is accelerated depreciation is down to 40%. And one of the first things they're saying that the Trump administration is going to bring back is 100% depreciation, which I am fingers crossed. I'm really, really hoping that happens.
Yeah,
that's big, right? That one's big, and I'm sure you've heard that one floating around as well.
Yeah, I have. And I mean, in conversations with a lot of my colleagues, that conversation has been almost at the precipice of every single conversation. And, you know, one thing that has been even discussed, at least what I've heard, and maybe you've heard differently, is that they're retroactively talking about going back into previous tax years and bringing that back up to 100% as well too, which is wild to consider and think about how much it's just a puppet game of what they do and how they do things and whatnot. But No
To your
fast.
point, like even with that, the last year the depreciation was 60%, and I want to say it was like October. October it actually went through the Senate to go back to 100%, and I was very hopeful that last year it was going to go back to 100%, but then it got denied. So now here we are, 40%, and we're having the same conversation of it going back to 100%. So the whole point that I'm trying to make is just that until it is solidified and until it passes, it's a lot of talk. That's really what it is. It's a whole lot of talk. Like one of the big things that's coming out right now that's being talked about is Trump is going to implement the ERS instead of the IRS. So the External Revenue Service that's based off foreign countries paying tariffs on taxes. And it's like, okay, cool. Is that going to happen? How long is it going to take?
Yeah.
You're a business owner. You know things don't happen overnight, right?
No.
So all we can do is take it day by day, week by week, stay engaged with the news. But until there's pen to paper and those bills are signed, it's one day at a time.
So on that point, like, let's hammer this out here regarding the BOI from the FinCEN regarding, identification of owners, beneficial owners, interests into entities, LLCs and whatnot. Where do we actively stand as we sit here on January 17th, which was something that was supposed to be done prior to the first of the year originally, and there were massive penalties if you did not identify the owners in the entities, but then it went on hold. I think it made it all the way to the Supreme Court, if I'm wrong. I guess maybe help clarify that.
Yeah, it's currently sitting in the Supreme Court. So just to give everyone a little bit of roadmap of how much whiplash this has created from the government, January 1st, 2024, they said that the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network was requiring these BOI filings for all entities. And one of the reports that I read said that there's about 40 million entities in the US. And by October, November, only about 10 million entities have actually filed. So you filed yours. I also filed mine. Alabama came out, deemed it unconstitutional. Texas came out and had a federal unconstitutional. So it was on, it was off, it was on, it was off. Right now, currently where we stand, it is currently on hold. It's in the U.S. Supreme Court. And really the judgment is coming down to whether or not this is a state or a federal decision. So we just have to, once again, stay and see what's happening. They're going to obviously issue extensions if it comes back, but it depends on who you ask. Like a couple of our attorneys say they think it's going away once the Trump administration steps in on Monday. A couple of our other attorneys, accountants, think that it's going to come back, but on the state level and will depend on where you live. But once again, it's all hearsay until the U.S. Supreme Court comes out and makes a decision. One thing I will tell you, I've looked into this for myself, but it's worthy for you to know this as well, is if you have already filed, like you and I have, there is a way that you can go in and retract the information out of the website, apparently. Huh. So we're looking into that on what it's going to take for any of the clients that we've already filed that for. We're going to give them the option and talk to them about if they want that retracted. But it doesn't affect your anonymity. It's a private government agency. There's no reason to, once again, overthink it. The way I was looking at it initially is even if I don't agree with it, this is kind of business as usual, right? I don't want to pay state fees to keep entities active, but that's the cost of doing business. And this is just one of those things that we just have to stay ahead of.
Totally. 100%. And reading into it a little bit further as well, too, a lot of the things they're trying to achieve and accomplish, I've learned don't necessarily apply to a lot of what I'm doing ever. I'm not out here doing federal crimes and different things and having people right. And it's I'll touch on it here it's no different than, when I was 20 years old, Tommy, my father bought me a fake ID. Okay. And
I met your dad. He's a great guy.
Amazing human. It was right before a Hawaii trip and he wanted me to go have fun. It was like the whole college thing. Anyways, he's my best friend. Awesome. And that being said, used it, did the whole thing, but then I got caught when I was 2 months before I turned 21. And all I had intentions of using it for was just to get into the bars, to see the girls and have a couple drinks. Okay.
Yep.
And I get caught with the OLCC, and I have to go in to speak with them, and we're having a full conversation. And my ignorant, immature brain didn't realize how the effect of those really affect society. Meaning, for me, I just was ambitious of going to the bar. The reality is that same company that I had purchased it from, manufacturing these, that were being purchased actually for people to immigrate into the country illegally and get those and do all these different things and commit crimes and drive vehicles and all the things. And I'm like, totally, that went well over my brain in terms of things. And so a lot of this too, like I think about whenever things are happening, is that I always operate in full transparency, above board. And I attempt to not overthink things very much so, to what you said, but no, so that's great. It's good news. Okay, cool. So yeah,
one final point that I'd like to share as well around that. Like, one of the reasons that I wasn't a big fan of this from the beginning is exactly what you're saying. Like, I understand the intention, and a lot of the intention, it's on the FinCEN website, says that it's for money launderers, scammers, tax avoiders. And I just couldn't help but think to myself, if I'm a scammer, the last thing my brain is processing is to go give all of my information to the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, right? So initially, that was the biggest problem that I had with the whole thing. But here we are. Once again, it's day by day, week by week, and these things have changed 5 different times in the last 2 months. Yeah. And we're probably getting ready for one more change, and a final decision is where it stands right now.
Yeah. And so what I love, Tommy, having met you about 2 years ago, and we've developed a relationship as a friendship and also through business, that's what's really cool too, is that we met through business, through really starting out through the company you work for, which is Prime Corporate Services. I love you guys over there. Every single person I have met, whenever I go there, meets me with a smile, an open hand, hug, and just enthusiasm and excited to be there. And that's a testament to you for the culture that you're also creating and what you're doing over there. It's beautiful. And every person I speak with on email and phone, and the biggest thing for me as a business owner, like you said, is just solving the problem that I have at hand. Because many times I'm reaching out, needing to create an entity for a new acquisition or a holding company, or, whatever it may be, as well as I just recently completed my entire estate plan, and got to work through your team is so amazing that it allows me to go back and focus on higher money making activities and delegating it to you guys to handle it and do it the right way. Because the reality is, I don't know how to do it the best way, and you guys have the best resources. You know what you're doing in regards to it. So, that being said, in a lot of what I've used is estate plan, trusts, medical directives, and all of those things, as well as entity creations. There's nowhere else I'm going other than through Prime Corporate Services. As we head into 2025, Tommy, what are some things that you're looking forward to in terms of services that you guys are doing or looking at, or different things that you're implementing? I personally have not used your tax planning services and those things. I know that's a huge thing that you guys do as well. And that's actually something that we'll talk about here soon. But what are some things that you guys are looking forward to in 2025 for Prime that I think is going to take you guys to the next level?
Yeah, I've been doing this now since 2012. And one of the comments that I like to make is Prime Corporate's kind of been like an in and out menu, all things considered, for years, right? We do entity structure, business credit development, tax prep, tax filing, and estate planning. But a lot of what our 2024 and going into 2025 goals, or what else does it take to run and operate a business? A good example is when you're putting offers together, Pines to Palm is a business, right? People buy from you because they like Landon, but they trust the organization and the business that you run.
Correct.
So we've been doing a lot of emails, a lot of domains, a lot of website setups, because not only does it help with being a business owner, but it also builds a lot of credibility, not only with your clientele, but for banks and lenders as well. Because 2 things that I am overly excited about this year for 2025. The first one is we have a completely revamped, amazing business credit solution. We're getting over $4 million a month in business credit and corporate funding for our clients. I mean, we've got 2,000 vendors, 15 different ways you can get lines of credit. But what I like most about it is it works as a software that is also doubling like a digital wallet for your business. You can keep track of all the open accounts, all the credit lines, how you can continue to increase and make yourself more fundable to get larger lines of credit into the future. So that's the first thing that I'm overly excited about. The second thing, we talked a little bit about this on the golf course, is we are about a year in and $2 million to a complete portal build out that will work like a back office for all business owners. So for example, right now you're filing your taxes, and I know it is an absolute pain for you to go figure out everything you need to do to get that into one central location. So this portal is going to allow you to upload your insurance, your mortgage notes, your contracts. Everything can live in all your entities, your EINs. It's a one-stop shop. So you can log in, you can upload all your information. And right now, once we have this thing live, you'll be able to just make your accountant an authorized user. They'll have everything that they need, not only in your financial life, but based off of year to date, what you've done business-wise. So those are the things that I'm definitely most excited for going into 2025.
It's so huge, Tommy. I mean, for me, coming from, and we had this conversation on your podcast last May, it was, where you got to hear my origin story in terms of, being a W-2 employee, father, working out in construction and all this and that. And I didn't have that guidance in terms of knowing how to structure things properly, which I was able to obtain through a relationship with you and what you guys do from an entity creation, so corporate structure, as well as through estate planning. So those two things, huge. But what's genuinely lacked in my entire world is exactly what you just touched on, which is the back office, which is the organization of everything. My organization actively right now is a Google Drive, which houses my corporate structure, my LLC, my operating agreements, my everything, as well as a tax folder that I keep everything in, that I give to my accountant. I give my QuickBooks as an authorized user for each entity, all 18 entities and whatever I have. Like, it's just a conglomerate of figuring out what you need when you need it and just getting you that information. And it's a hodgepodge. And so the idea of centralizing the dashboard, having a unified inbox of just this centralized place of all of my things to live, that's backed up and protected, that's ever living as I continue to add entities that'll automate and populate in there, and have that just be a living, breathing thing, and having it be a one-stop, one login spot for my authorized users, attorneys, and CPAs to log into is, I mean, it relaxes my shoulders knowing I'm not missing something that my accountant needs, or there's something being overlooked. I can go to one place and look at my, equity stake in certain properties, my dashboard for my, mortgage statements and insurance, like you're saying. Maybe I need to update that. So having that in a centralized place is, it's priceless. I mean, that's huge for someone like me that's early in the stages of entrepreneurship as a business owner.
Yeah, and just to echo that, like, for the 12, 13 years I've been doing this, I worked 6-7 days a week the entire time. That was my life, right? And a lot of people make a huge emphasis on what is your why. I think that's something that's very, very commonly thrown around. Yeah. And I can tell you with complete confidence, money was my why for a long time. And I'm told you're not supposed to have that as your why, but I always resorted back to, let's give clients a good experience, money will come. But in order to give clients a good experience, I was having to work 6-7 days a week for 10 years. Once I had my daughter, it really, really changed the way that I looked at things. And a lot of times when you make mistakes or when you have challenges in business, it's going to cost you one of two things, time or money. And I was willing to write checks for things that I didn't necessarily want to. For instance, I've been paying 50, 60 grand a year for a family office to manage my financial life. So I took a step back and I'm like, what am I doing? I'm working my ass off to just go pay more money to have someone balance my financial life so that I can focus on what it is that we're growing and we're scaling. And it was in that moment that I was like, what am I paying for and what do I really like? What I really liked is that everything was in one area. So when I needed it to qualify for a house, to qualify for anything that was business related, it was one email away from getting that answer. And that's when we really had the idea of like, how can we give this away for free? Because money's going to continue to come if we provide a better client experience as a whole. And that's where the portal idea really came from, is what would I use if I was in the beginning stages of my business that would make me a lot better off right now with 78 doors, multiple businesses, 350 employees. And it came down to organization, really. So yeah, that's kind of where the idea came from. And shout out to my daughter for helping me realize I wanted to spend more time with her as opposed to sitting in this chair. So that's where it kind of started.
There's nothing better than that, man. I mean, once we get out of this podcast too, that's exactly what I'm going to get to go do. And we got to last night, actually, there's a golf course here near where I live called Encanto. And there's a 9-hole par 3 course. And it takes about an hour and a half to play. And about once a week, my family and I will strap up, take both golf bags, both kids, and go play the 9 holes. And I got to go, and she has her little 3 clubs that she uses, and she gets to, play a couple holes. It's so cool, so fun. There's nothing better than that. But no, that's beautiful, man. And that's something that I always go back to when I evaluate my life as it relates to just how anything I'm doing. If I'm failing in certain aspects of life, I'm always looking at, for me, you never rise to your goals, your dreams, your ambitions. You always fall to your standards, your habits, and your systems. So this is a case point, boom, boom, for me, no brainer in regards to there's levels of failure in my disorganization of my ecosystem that implementing this is only going to rise my systems. It's no different than in my business. We didn't have a structure system within a solid CRM system. And that was what was holding us back from having true lead flow on a consistent basis. And so we had to invest into ourselves with a new system and whatnot. And it's revolutionized our business as a whole. And so those systems, by increasing those and having a centralized place is ultimately going to help me as an investor, as an entrepreneur, a business owner, and all the things, having a centralized place for everyone, and even myself too. And so kudos to you guys for all the hard work you're putting in for that. That'll be great. And then, it's wild to think what you just mentioned that could potentially be free.
Yeah, for sure.
That's bananas, dude.
That's the whole goal is, I know that the amount of entities we've set up over 175,000 businesses at this point. And so I know that there's people out there that are looking for side hustles and side businesses, and we've proved that model and we know that works. Now it's a matter of helping people stay a little bit more organized, because speaking of tax planning, tax fulfillment is the most challenging part of our business. Yeah. It's not even close. And the reason for it is no one's running to the front of the line to file their taxes. So a lot of times when you come up on these deadlines, we have thousands. Last year we filed 50,000 tax returns. And a lot of times it just comes down to organization. The number one reason why people save more money on taxes than other clients is strictly because they track their expenses. Like you were mentioning with your QuickBooks, our records show that saves you an average of about $9,200 per entity because you proactively track your expenses. And if we can have something that helps people look at their situations from more of a proactive approach to a reactive tax filing approach, it will save them a ton of money. One of the other big changes we've made tax-wise this year, I had an offsite, 10 hours, sitting in a room with our tax company and all the executives. And one of the big changes we're making this year is, for our tax clients, we always want to do a once-a-year tax planning. And a lot of times we tried to squeeze these in October or November to say, Landon, great job this year. You killed it. You're either going to pay Uncle Sam a ridiculous amount of money, or you need to go buy X amount of dollars in more real estate to depreciate that real estate. What we're changing this year is from the beginning of the year, as soon as someone enrolls with taxes or any of our clients that are existing tax clients, we're going to reach out to them to get that tax strategy call set up as soon as possible so that you have more of a game plan and an understanding on how much you need to buy in comparison to what you did the previous year. Knowledge is power, and being aware of your financial situation is going to make a bigger difference to your bottom line than anything else. So that's another big change that will require more work, more personnel, more money on our side, but I know that it'll pay dividends just based off the savings that people will be able to experience.
Huge. No, it's huge. And I'm glad you brought that up because, that's exactly right in regards to just simply, selfishly speaking here, my ecosystems, my disorganization internally, and even talking about tax planning is that, my CPA that I currently use, we only meet up for, I think it's about an hour and a half in October to chat through the previous year and what's left over for the year to kind of map out the next, 2.5 months of like, hey, Landon, you have 90 days to figure out your life. And having that shot clock can be difficult when you have to purchase 3 homes before the end of the year. Or, in my case, last year, I had to purchase something. I forget the exact numbers, but I ended up purchasing a $60,000 truck to be able to help with tax purposes. So for the business. And so just all those things, if I can front load that from a person who is Mr. Planner, time blocker, having that on the front end of the year. And I know simply that I'm planned. Now Landon just has to execute the plan that we as a team, my team has came up with for me individually across my entities is going to be, huge, which will allow me to hopefully increase revenue and also produce more tax savings. So that's great. That's great, man.
And let's be honest. These are great problems to have, right? Needing to buy a $60,000 truck to save money in taxes is very first world problem that we're dealing with here. And that's great. That's what it's all about, right? Because if you think about your short-term goals and your long-term goals, I have made a lot of decisions that don't align with either one of those over the years being self-employed. And once I was able to really identify short-term and long-term goals and be able to implement tax strategies that align with those, it helps you get to where you're going a whole lot quicker. Everyone wants to make $10,000 more revenue a year for sake of conversation. No one really thinks about how to save an additional 10 grand to compound that to 20 grand year over year. That doesn't really happen. So the sooner that you can plan, I even tell people if you're pre-revenue, you're just getting started, you haven't done your first deal, schedule that so that you know what your W-2 income is, you know what your 1099 income is, and if on a quarterly basis you're looking at your profit and your loss, it trains that muscle and really gets you in the habit of working on what investments you can make to keep more money in your corner to create more cash flow. So it's a huge win for everyone, even if you're just getting started pre-revenue in real estate.
Yeah, and what's cool too is like what you're hitting the nail on the head. It's not something, especially for me, man, I came from a very blue collar childhood to where a lot of just generating revenue outside of a traditional W-2 was unique in my upbringing, and let alone having a thought process of not just simply doing a TurboTax submission or just your standard deduction, how we do and keep it moving, and getting into business, owning properties, owning businesses. And now, your financial landscape increases to where taxes are a real burden, a real thing. I have a colleague of mine here locally in the Phoenix area where in October, he reached out to me because he's a luxury flipper. So a lot of his stuff down here is high active income where he's flipping homes that he purchases for say $1 million and flips them for $4 million, and so his taxable income is considerable. And he approaches me in October and says, Landon, I need to buy at least $12 million of real estate before the end of this year and to avoid paying taxes. Can you help me? Because he wrote a check last year for, I think, $350,000. And so to avoid that, we brought him every little opportunity. But if that's something that on the front end right now, as we sit here, that he can have a conversation with you and your team to map that out and be more proactive and not have it be a buzzer beater to me. Like we closed, I sold him a deal in Portland, Oregon, just this last year. We closed on December 30th so that he could have it rent ready to be able to do and avoid paying, a portion of his taxes. So we closed, I think, 6 or 7 deals before the end of the year for him. Yeah. And I mean, huge, but it just goes to show, like, and everyone's like that, I know, but if you can just be more upfront in terms of your planning, it's going to benefit every investor,
Yeah. I, just a personal story that I'll share as well. 2 years ago, I had a buddy reach out to me and say, "Hey, Tommy, I know you're always looking for deductions. I've got a fourplex that's right here next to your house. Give me $100,000. I'll give you 33% of this fourplex." So I reach out to my accountant. What will this do? What does this mean? Make sure they run a cost seg on it. She tells me, make sure you accelerate the depreciation on it. That $100,000 will save you between 40 and 60 grand in taxes, assuming that happens. Okay, cool. I give them the $100,000. I have 33% of this fourplex. We run a cost seg. I save the money in taxes. I have never seen a dollar from that $100,000 investment. It was a terrible investment. I didn't look into it. I should have ran it by you to have you run the numbers. When I was with you, by the way, this is such a credit to you. Like when we were hanging out with the kids and you're breaking down, you closed a deal earlier that day at like 2.5%, 2%. And the way that you were breaking down the numbers and turning it into a math problem, I was like, I could learn so much from that, because a lot of what I do focuses on prime and trust relationships. And the moral of this story is I still am friends and I can still give this guy a hard time that I invested with. I very likely won't do more deals with him, but knowing that I had the tax savings, knowing that the asset is still there, even though it was a terrible investment, it still allows my brain to focus on moving forward and just onward and upward. As weird as that is, it's almost like a justification of knowing that when you're making decisions, profit or loss, how they're going to impact your bottom line for your business. I think there's a lot of peace of mind that goes into being able to make that a reality, right? Because the numbers were not presented to me the way that you're able to break them down in a 10-minute conversation that we were able to have. And it just goes to show the alignment and meeting good people and doing deals with full transparency. And it certainly goes a long way.
Yeah, it really does. And that's, one thing that I've certainly emphasized in my investment and entrepreneurial career is surrounding myself with guys like you who are the who to help figure out the how in terms of all of those aspects of things, because I'm not a great X, Y, and Z, but I know someone who is, and you did. Like, what's cool about what you said is, yeah, there's aspects of that deal that did not work out and right. All those aspects, but you went through the right procedures of contacting your teammates who support your decisions and can help articulate if it is a good and how you can benefit from it financially and all those aspects of things, and having those people around you, which is such a big thing because you are a relationships guy. Is that for me, like whenever a problem, which happened daily, we have a deal right now that closes today here in Goodyear, Arizona, where just yesterday, the agent who was representing the seller threw a complete wrench in the system of something that I didn't know how to properly solve in that moment. But with one audio message, because I knew who to send that message to, I got the response. Not only did I get the response, I got the response that it was taken care of and it's a non-issue anymore. And right. So those level of like relationships are so critical to any business owner's success, real estate investor and entrepreneur. And so to tie this all together, Prime Corporate, Tommy Thornburgh, like separated in and of itself, but as a whole, you're so much in what Prime does is a who to help figure out the how. This dashboard, unified inbox, entity creation, business lines of credit, tax planning, estate planning, and so on and so forth. I can't emphasize enough, and I know you know this, but to hear it again is like the ease in which it allows me, of someone who's not good at what y'all do, but more importantly, how much I can sleep and rest easy knowing my estate plan's in place. My children know the directions in certain aspects of things, and as does my wife. And we have a game plan. We have the proper people in place. It's immeasurable, the feeling of having those things in place. And that all came from a relationship, having met you and then learning about what you do and the aspects of how you do it. And it's cool to do things with friends, and it's beautiful to align with friends like yourself and Prime and what y'all do, but that we can hang out and we can play golf and we can do things together and live our lives. And it's not just a transactional level of, business and level of things. So it's kudos to you guys, man. It's beautiful.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you very much for that. And it's last time when we got together last May, like you were saying, one of the comments that you told me stuck with me. And I've even shared this on webinars and other podcasts that I've done. And I'm going to bring it up to you because you're the one that I got it from. Was you said this black book that you guys put together for me is easily the most important book that's in my house. And that was tying back to the estate planning that we did for you. And it's so funny because I'm sure you can really relate with this. Having a trust will, living will, power of attorney like you have, something that, because you're in your wealth building stage, probably was never even really a thought or a concern. But the level of comfort, once you get that book, knowing that there's a roadmap and a game plan from start to finish of having the proper entity structure, having the privacy, maximizing tax benefits, building credit, and protecting the legacy no matter what your age, the level of comfort to keep the main thing, and that's going and generating income.
Yeah.
That stuck with me when you said that. So thank you to you as well for giving me that.
It's the truth, man. And it even goes back having now I'll say the position I'm at in terms of my career. And like you said, wealth building career in very early stages, right? I just turned 33. So very early into that world, but it makes me sit here and go, even if I didn't have all the levels of things that I have currently in regards to entities, in regards to children, in regards to assets and liability, all the things, like having that, I wish I would have got it sooner, knowing the comfort it provided me and my family and the levels that it does. And then as I grow, because I bought the ultimate plan, which allows me unlimited changes as my business grows, as all of my assets continue to grow, it is something that it's an ever living document and really collective. So from that standpoint, it's like, I think there's a mindset out there that you need to have all these different things and all of these different assets and entities, all these things before you can go and think about that kind of stuff. And I'm sitting here now going, no, that's the exact opposite of what you should be thinking. It's something you should plan for and do early and often. It's no different than tax planning, no different than surrounding yourself with the right CPAs, the right people, your team, your collective team to help support your vision in terms of what you're doing. And, no, kudos to that. It's huge, man. It really is. Yeah. I appreciate you saying that because that I think needs to be heard more in terms of that value that it provides. I mean, a person watching this right now, a friend of mine, his name is Jordan Vanderlander, shared with me a story prior to me getting my estate plan set up where someone in his family was in the process of doing that and never completed it because he passed away. And so all of the things that transpired post that happening was just eye-opening to hear the responses, or not the responses, like the responses of what he had to go through in the family and his estate and all the probate and all the aspects of life that happens. And so if anyone listening to this right now, like get those things in place, and there's not a better place to do it than right here with Prime and Tommy. So
love that. Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, probate is a absolute nightmare. This is probably like 5 or 6 years ago. We had a client that we actually were helping. We were in the process, very similar story to getting this estate plan in place. And unfortunately, they passed while they were completing it. And so they ended up, it was like his daughter that found the documents he was working on and reached out. And long story short, we ended up just refunding them for the estate plan because it didn't get finished. If we don't finish it, I want to get things in place that you need.
Yeah.
But we ended up having to navigate and help them through the probate process. and it ended up costing them an additional like $75,000. And the daughter that called us was no longer talking to the brother because they were fighting about a couple $100,000. And it's not always about the money. A lot of times what people fail to realize is the emotional strain and the emotional damage that this puts on families is heavier than any dollar amount you could put on it. Fortunately, we were able to get everything resolved. But once again, big problem, time and money in this case were sacrificed significantly because these things weren't completed. So just to echo, get those entities set up, give yourself the privacy and the protection, give yourself the tax benefits, give yourself the credibility. And remember, no one cares about your money more than you do, right? I've had financial planners, Tommy, I only make money if you make money. Oh yeah? You're going to lose money if I lose money? I don't think so. So no one cares about your money more than you do. And the more that you can align these decisions tax-wise, entity-wise, estate-wise, with your short-term and your long-term goals, it makes it a whole lot easier to grow, scale, and ultimately help more people.
So spot on. So spot on. Dude, that's what a story right there. I mean, that emphasizes, and that's one individualized story of someone who it ended up costing them $75,000. But more importantly, a relationship between brother and sister. Now they could have rekindled and likely have and figured it out, but still, like, you're exactly right, man. The emotional stress and strain, and that's why I'm grateful to have met y'all for just simply that alone to get things in place and whatnot, and doing it on the front end. And I've always been that way in regards to front loading, getting things in place and whatnot. And I mean, just to echo what you're saying, yeah, spot on. So. Well, cool, Tommy. I guess, is there anything else on your end? We can wrap this up. I know you got another meeting coming up.
That's it. I mean, anyone listening, anyone watching, we can get a link that ties it together with the podcast. Feel free to schedule a free hour consultation to speak with our team. But my number one takeaway, my number one challenge for anyone watching this, please get in the habit of tracking your expenses, giving yourself a quarterly analysis on what your profit and loss is. And I wish everyone nothing but the best of luck. Maybe we can do another one of these in a couple months once they finally decide what in the world's going to go on with tax code changes, and keep everyone updated with all the changes that are going to happen this year, because there absolutely will be changes, but don't overthink it. And let's make decisions once they're in place that'll benefit your situation.
Awesome. Thanks, dude. Appreciate you. Tommy Thornburgh, guys.
Good seeing you, dude. Thank you for having me.